I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Move to approve.
Made by Allerhoff. Is there a second on motion?
Second.
Second by Bell. Roll call. Allerhoff.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Gerber, aye. Minutes. Any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay, motion been made by Bell. Is there a second on motion?
Second.
Second by Bell. Roll call. Bell.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Allerhoff.
Aye.
Gerber, aye. Other business, Jeff's going to be late because he's got the budget meeting out at the transfer station, so. Secondary road facility, any committee reports, Betty?
No.
John?
No.
Nothing. We're supposed to call Hetler? Huh? Yeah. Wait, go to a Cedar drainage district. Wait, we'll go to Stanwich drainage district.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, so we need to convene to the Stanwich drainage district.
Move we go in the drainage
Okay,
district.
the motion's been made by Bell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Allerhoff. Roll call. Bell.
Aye.
Allerhoff.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Gerber, aye. We're in the Stanwich drainage district. You want to give Hetler a call and
Extension 1297. Don, this is the Board of Supervisors. I'm going to transfer you to a conference from speakerphone. Just a moment.
Morning, Don. Morning, Don.
Morning.
Yes, sir. We're in Stanwich Drainage District. You want to
Yes.
bring us up to date on the bids?
Has the board seen my recommendation? I emailed down.
Yes.
Yes. Your recommendation is to do away with Section 3?
Yeah, I want to discuss that with the board.
Okay.
That why that is in the contract. It was in the notice to bidders, and it's a reservation that the board had reserved the right to delete Section 3 and then to award based on the low total for the other two sections. This is a common practice for drainage districts where road work is also involved. So it puts in the hands of the county engineer or the DOT the option to say, go ahead and delete that work and we'll do the work ourselves, or we'll get another contractor to do it, where the road authority thinks they can save some money. So DOT asked for that. Now, I warned them that with that comes the right for the board to delete Section 3 if it makes a substantial difference for the landowners. And in this particular case, the difference is $82,000 on the district. Now, we included the road highway crossing work really as a favor to the DOT. It would also make our project go smoother with one contractor, but the DOT really, by the law, could have done this work themselves, already taken bids and done it separately. But they didn't want to do it that way, so we agreed to include it in the bid here. So if we were to accept the low bid after the corrections, which is Maxwell Construction, for all three sections, then the district landowner assessments would go up $82,000 and the DOT would save $70,000. So that obviously the DOT would like it to stay in. I've talked with DOT and they understand the cost savings. This is significant to the district, and they are prepared, if the board does this, to pursue other avenues. Now, the other avenue is that we can help them with is to rebid Section 3. And that's what the DOT would want to set in motion if we do this, that if we delete Section 3 and award the contract to BWC, that we then begin the process to rebid Section 3. And that will likely be BWC being the low bidder, and it may be higher than what he bid the first time. But it would be DOT's obligation to pay the cost of that through the rebid Section 3. Another option that the DOT has brought up is negotiating with BWC directly. In other words, if we delete Section 3 and award the contract Sections 1 and 2 to BWC, that the DOT would then approach BWC about doing the work, putting the work back into the contract. That's something we need to stay away from because we took bids on all sections of 3, or we took the option of deleting 3, but we didn't. We cannot be in a position to manipulate who gets the low bid, which would be the case. But if DOT negotiates separately with BWC and then comes to the district and says, all right, we have agreement, we ask that you put this into their contract, we could do that. So I think one of those two things will happen. Either we will take bids and BWC will probably be low, or they'll negotiate something with BWC. And then we can, by agreement, put it into the contract.
Why should we go to the expense of rebidding it? Why wouldn't we just simply let DOT negotiate separately or independently? To me, that would be more logical.
That's a good question. On the bidding process, the DOT has rules for how they can bid work, and their process would put them into a position of not being able to take bids until April or May.
Okay.
So, but Drainage District, we could turn right around and relet it, and then they would pay us, the cost of doing that. We'd raise that 5% that we're going to pay up to probably, I say 7 or 8% in the letter. Probably 8% would be what we say, and then the DOT would be responsible for paying all the costs of the Section 3 work, and then reimburse the district this percentage. So the district it wouldn't cost the district anything other than some concern here, because we don't have a complete project, but to save $82,000 and with the likely result of this, we're going to end up with the same contractor anyway. It makes sense to do it this way.
Don, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was going to say the DOT is the one that's on the bigger financial burden side of this. how they handle it, but it's going to be their responsibility.
If we would remove 3 like you're suggesting, am I reading this right? If we went from Maxwell to BWC, it would though cost the county $13,000 more?
Yes, it would. That is it would be right at what my estimate was for the road crossings. I talked with, or I corresponded by email with Rob. I know he's on vacation, and there is one. BWC's bid for the road seeding, the road ditch seeding, was $3,200, and which is awfully high. So I asked Rob, would you like to delete that, and then the county would be responsible for the reseeding of the ditches? And he agreed that would be a thing to do. So we'd save not $3,200 off of that if we did that. So he was all right with those dollars, but yes, the county roads would end up with roughly $11,000 more for their cost. It's true.
But we didn't have the option for eliminating section 2 also, as you did in 3.
No, I asked Rob if he wanted to do that, and he declined to do that. And these are all just cutting a trench across the road. It's something the contractor can fairly easily do. So I understand why he elected not to do that.
So the first thing we have...
I really didn't want to have the option to delete 2 sections, because then we get into, instead of 2 options, we have 4 options. And that gets more complicated.
So the first thing we need to do on this is if we want to eliminate the DOT part of the bid, right?
Yes.
Section 3.
Yeah. Well, it could be in one motion if you wanted to, but it'd be to delete section 3 from the contract and award the contract to BWC Excavating LLC. So they'd be in the low bidder. And then direct the engineer to send them the documents, contract documents.
Everybody hear what he recommended?
That's what I recommend, yeah.
Somebody want to proceed with the motion to his recommendation?
I make that motion.
Okay, the motion's been made by Ellerhoff. Is there a second that motion?
Second.
Second by Gall. Any discussion? No discussion? Roll call. Ellerhoff.
Aye.
Gall.
Aye.
Bell.
Aye.
Kaufman. Aye. And Dearborn Guy. So it's been taken care of on that one then.
Okay, we will prepare the contract documents and send them to BWC to sign and return.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll probably be back to you next week with what the DOT, for sure what the DOT wants to bid, or if they're going to attempt some negotiation.
Okay. We'll wait till we hear from you on that then.
All right.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Okay, what about the other things?
On that, just on that appointment.
Well, there's no list of things. Something else.
I mean, that action of charging 5%. We don't have anything to do with that, do we, Don?
No.
Well, I guess my discussion with you is,
Have to wait.
What they want to do.
in talking with the DOT, if they want to bid, should I tell them then it's going to be more cost, so we'll want 8% instead of 5%?
Yeah, because we don't want to pay for their bidding
Oh, yeah.
process.
All right. So based on this discussion, that's what I'll tell them.
Okay.
They they are gonna write the 2080 agreement that between the county and the DOT in dealing with all this, and that'll be part of that.
So we don't have to do anything on that 5% then?
Not now, no.
Okay. What about regarding the interest waiving the interest cost?
Might as well wait until we get the 2080.
Wait till we get the agreement from them on that?
Yeah, that'll be in the 2080
Okay.
as well, yeah.
And the appointment of benefit commission members, one of the commission members, I think, wanted to know if it was going to be night meetings or day meetings?
It'll be a day meeting. We'll probably meet like between 9 and 3, 10 and 2, somewhere in there is what we'll do.
Okay.
It'll be one day thing.
And when,
Huh?
what month is that?
Time frame, when?
What month?
Yeah.
How
What month?
soon?
How soon will it happen?
I would really, as far as the classification commission, I would like to wait till like next November or something like that. So the project is done, and then we'll know exactly what the costs are when we're finalizing that assessment schedule. So that'll be quite a while.
Yeah.
Now, they are also appointed to put a value on the right-of-way for the open ditch, and I plan to do that probably in January when I'm down there on the pre-construction meeting with the contractor.
Does that answer your question, Bev?
Yeah, that's enough information. I'll give her and see what she says.
Okay.
And that right-of-way acquisition, that'll be a short half-day,
Okay.
and it'll be during the day, and we're just going to put a value on the ground we're taking for that open ditch on the outlet side of this project.
Okay. Any more questions for Don? There's nothing else. Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Wayne and guys.
Thank
We'll
you.
wait till we hear from you next week.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, now, Mary said that she
She'll have to probably do it in the evening, she said.
would be available in January either, yeah?
Pardon?
She would be available in January.
Doesn't sound like it. So then in that case, Terry might have to reappoint too.
There's
Yeah.
another right-of-way person. So you want to keep it on your list for the
Yeah.
appointing your benefit commission members at some point down the
Put it
road.
up there.
Yeah.
So there's downward drainage.
Do you have
Okay.
minutes?
Anything else in the Stanwood Drainage
I
District?
didn't get the minutes done for the 23rd. I
Okay.
was gone Friday, so if you want to just wait, you can do them all.
Okay, yeah. Okay, anything else from Stanwood Drainage District? If there is nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn from the Stanwood Drainage District back to regular session.
So moved.
Okay, the motion been made by Bell. Is there a second that motion?
Second.
Second by Kaufman. Roll call. Bell.
Aye.
Kaufman.
Aye.
Elro.
Aye.
Gow.
Aye.
And Deborah Dyer. We're back in regular session. Thank you. Tim.
I think you probably most of this to the board. No, just hold them. I don't want to get confused. I can do this today. No, Matt, you need both of those.
What?
You need both sheets.
It's different than what you gave them the other night.
I reduced it a little bit. And I didn't think they were going to hate the product at theirs.
I think I have two of these, Tim, the EMA.
Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't say 1-911. That's fine.
No.
Okay, I probably got two together. You should have one that says EMA,
Yeah.
one says 911, and then behind 911 will be another sheet. Okay.
Is it the same as what we got the other night, Tim?
Huh?
Is it the same as what we had?
Yeah, the same.
Okay, so I can throw one of them away.
You can. So, first I want to thank you for your time. And I want to talk about the 911 coordinator position and the EMA position. These positions have grown over the past 15 to 20 years. From the beginning, these two positions were separate of each other, working with two governing boards of different memberships. The 911 Service Board has 16 voting members on it. The EMA Commission has 10 voting members. Prior to 2008, both of these positions were funded from two different budgets. The 911 from the Sheriff's budget, the EMA from the EMA budget. In 2005 to 2007, the EMA position was contracted out to the Johnson County EMA office to perform this EMA duties. And in 2008, it was returned to Cedar County because it was not working. During 2008, both the EMA and the 911 coordinators that were employed left the county at the same time, or within 30 days. Both boards brought in a person to fill the job during the floods, and the floods was the major mission that was taking place of 2008. After the floods, the interim person tried to maintain all the requirements from both boards, but very soon and rapidly realized that she couldn't do that, and she asked the both boards to hire someone new. In 2009, I was hired as the EMA and was keeping both jobs going as we corrected issues and uncovered other issues and set priorities to correct most of the important ones one at a time. Over the past 5 years, the two boards have worked well together, but now it's time that each address their own issues. The comp board has rated each of these positions as full-time positions, but does not have any authority to fill them. As the EMA, I've tried to maintain both positions under two different boards, but with the changes to the Iowa Code on job requirements, this is now beyond the ability of one person. Since 1 October of this year, I have logged 114 hours of overtime. The position of the 911 coordinator was formed under Iowa Code Chapter 477B as defined by Administrative Rules 601-10, requiring each Board of Supervisors to establish a joint E911 service board to provide for the orderly development, installation, and operations of E911 emergency telephone services, and to provide a mechanism for funding of this system, either in whole or in part, as well as developing a 911 service plan. In 1993, this information was moved to Chapter 34A of the Code of Iowa as defined by Administrative Rules 605-10. As stated in the Administrative Rules 605-10.4.3, all plans and modifications and add-in shall be filed and reviewed and approved by the E911 program manager at the state. With the latest changes over our 911 system, we will need to revise and update our plan. And with the changes coming in the near future with the 911 system, we will need to update our system continuously. GIS will become the backbone of the 911 system over the next few years. And the GIS, the 911 system, is going through its first major overhaul. During the transition, many changes will become the norm and not the exceptions. This is the very first time 911 has ever been overhauled. In June of 2014, the state put out the next 911 generation requirements. And I have a copy of that document for you. Pull that out. And what that document does is it requires the GIS and the 911 Service Board to work together, and this is the requirements of it, if you wish to read it. I didn't send it to you because I didn't know if you wanted to read it. Next generation's 911 GIS standards were released with a list of items required by each county 911 and GIS department. Our GIS department did fill out all the stuff, and we received a report back showing 13,000 errors that have to be repaired. Okay? Now, I'll be honest with you, this is not the fault of the GIS.
Such as, give me an example.
Addresses out of sequence. Street names not listed in the MSAG because they've never been listed. Center lines not corrected on his GIS plat. Borders not correct. ESN's not correct. It's all the different things of how the 911 system is going to work. All right?
Okay, thank you.
Last year, the state also started to collect what's known as data collection. That is this form. And that is the cost for each PSAT. And what they're doing there is they're looking for cost savings across the state. And that is, they talk about, they want to know how much you're paying with dispatchers, how much you have for snow removal, for electricity, for postage, copy machines, advertisement, promotions, you name it, it is in here. The janitorial fees, shield wear, any kind of system you use for emergency responders are listed here. How much the dispatch centers cost, how much the building maintenance costs, the generator down there, all that has to be tracked now. The recording system, how often do you update it? Capital improvements, all that must be listed. They're looking for streamline of savings. What the 911 position has done required is it's moving from the telephone system that used to locate all the people, and it's going to a GIS positioning system. And it's going to work off of Latin long. And with that, there's going to become the requirements that are listed in that sheet right there and listed in our errors that are going to be required for the GIS and the 911 monthly to input to the state. The state is making a 911 GIS statewide system. Now, the state's going to have the option to go different ways with the 911 service board and the 911 system over the next few years. It can stay in its present form, or it can change it to have what's in the true center, a call station, and then a dispatch station, adding another layer within the system. I don't know what they're going to do. I just know that the requirements there with the changes in the Iowa Code, and for many years this position was paid for out of the Sheriff's Department. That individual worked up in the front part, and then they had an EMA that was separate. And during the time I was hired, we tried to get both of them to go, but now it's at a point, and with the changes we received for my job, December 23rd, that changes the complete grant system that John got emailed a couple days to go to him. I haven't even read through all of it to find out how much that's changed. I know my PAR's changed. I know I have to account for more time. I'm asking if you guys look into funding the 911 position. Some counties, quite a few counties, have two positions, have two people. Some counties run the salary through the EMA office because the Iowa Code says you can't pay a 911 position with wireless surcharge money. And at this time, the county of Cedar does not give 1 penny to 911. The 911 system in this county runs 100% off a surcharge. So it can't pay anyone to run that program. And some of the things that have been tacked onto it that other jurisdictions within the membership board that the 911 coordinator is doing right now for the county is they're addressing issuing the signs. And they're only one of, like I said, 16 members of that board.
All the money that 911 takes in from the telephone surcharge goes right back to the telephone companies, don't they? I mean,
No,
you don't get anything out of
the
it, do you?
money brought, the dollar surcharge that goes to the telephone companies, if it's landline, each phone company's allowed to keep 1%, and then they send that checks to the 911 center here on the landlines. All the dollar charges on the wireless takes, and they also get to keep 1%, and they send all that money to the state. The state then, based on our area and our calls, it's a formula, it sends us about, right now, 48 cents on each dollar. Now, what is that money used for? We pay $100,000 plus every year in phone calls. What do you mean we pay that? That's a question people ask me. Each area has a little difference. If you're in the West Branch area, every time someone picks up the phone and dials 911, there's a $3 charge to us. 911 is not free. The 911 surcharge pays the phone bill for the people to use 911. We also pay for all the communications equipment that's in the PSAP that deals with 911. 3 years ago, we bought a new 911 system because our old system was so out of date. It was the last 7-digit system in the state, and the system was supposed to then be replaced 2 years prior to that. We spent $368,000 on that system. Since then, we put over $1.3 million in infrastructure so they could narrow band. So that's what's been happening with that money. Now, has 911 been able to pay all that bill? No. As I stated, the EMA Commission and the 911 Board have worked well together over the last few years. EMA has taken the time to get the grants and put out over $300,000 out of its budget to maintain the infrastructure for this county, for the 911. Because they've seen communications was that important.
How much are you talking guesstimate for a position like that?
Well, I would say that, are we going to jump into a 911 coordinator at this position? I doubt that. Okay? Exactly right. I would say we have a part-time. But there's going to be times that he's going to be full-time. And there's going to be times he's not going to be full-time. There are things he's going to have to do every week. There are things he's got to do. There are going to be sometimes he's got to go out and do things that have not got done in the past. We have a big chore of correcting a lot of issues. And it's going to take a full-time person to do that for a short period. The EMA Commission did see that the load was coming, and we authorized a part-time person in the EMA. And I'm thinking if you guys give a part-time position, we put the two together, we would have a person that could pull the 911, and when they're not busy doing the 911, they could help out with the EMA. I'm looking at probably from this board around $20,000 a year.
You're recommending the 911 person be under your jurisdiction then?
Well, since we can't pay him under the 911 budget, I would say, since I probably have the most knowledge of how the system runs right now and how the budgeting and what's going forward, trying to keep up on it, that we run it through the EMA and leave it as under me.
So in other words, we just give $20,000 to the EMA.
For a separate line for the 911 coordinator. And then the 911 system with the EMA would pay the difference.
Does the EMA still pay $5,000 to the assessor's office for the GIS guy?
We have them.
Okay. So in other words, there's a net $15,000 to the county then, really, right?
Sure.
Do we need to be paying more than that, though?
I don't know that. And how I came up with the money is I sat with Carrie, and the count board did come up with a figure I just got yesterday, and I don't remember what it was, for my assistant's position, which was actually higher than what we had put in ours. So I got to go back and look at the budget on that. But Carrie and I thought about we'd probably have to give them some benefits if you put them in it, the two positions totally. So we were looking at 20 at each would probably I don't know, what's $14 an hour times 40 times 52, plus benefits.
14 times 2,080, it's easier.
It's right at 29.
Plus your
120,
benefits
so
about 6,
I was gonna say,
35,
right, close to
40,
35.
I don't know. I mean, if I want to stay in line with the comp board. And I think that the 20 grand on that side and 20 grand on the other side would match it out. I think it's a well spent money. What's the alternative? Okay, the alternative that some counties, because we're not the only county in this position. The alternative's to give up your PSAP, and I don't think we want to do that. Because there's not a county around us that does not charge a separate tax for 911, plus the surcharge.
They do charge or don't charge?
They do.
They do.
And it's the two counties both to our west, the ones that border on both of our western borders, both charge 67 cents to 65 cents per thousand property assessment. Now, if you want to charge that, give that to our office, we'll hire 3 people.
We could still do that as far as the 20,000. We could assess that.
Yeah, you could, and probably down the road that's the way to go.
Well, it's a place to start with a part-time person, and if you've got a part-time person down there, make him a full-time person. It's the logical way to go.
And I talked to Carrie, and one of the things she said we'd have to do is we still would have to do an internal posting.
Of course, we haven't approved the budget down there yet either.
Correct.
EMA.
That'll be done on the 8th. But that's why I came here first before I sent something to them, because I'd want to know the answer one way or the other on which way we go. The requirements that we got, right now, just doing the plans that have to be updated and stuff, that's taking a lot of time, and there's going to be a lot of more interaction between department members now with all the essential support functions for the EMA side. The 911 side, trying to correct some of the issues that have been out there for years and years. We haven't scratched the surface yet. We have people, this last weekend we had a call come into the law center that they didn't even have a clue where it was at. And during the research, the individual community didn't tell us the place existed. And that's the kind of things we got to get under control.
You mentioned the personnel costs. What about the other costs, like computers and
we already have that pretty well in place.
Are we gonna at some point? I know we have one vehicle. Are we gonna be okay there? I just want to give a heads up as to whether we put somebody on full time between the two.
If we need another vehicle, we can get one at a decent cost.
But still,
Right.
There's expense.
There's expense. But I think in the budgets, the two that we put it together, I think right now, sharing a vehicle, sharing the things like that, we'll be able to get by. Down the road, I'm not, depends on which way they go. I still think we have to keep up on top of this stuff, and that's the only reason why we're staying ahead of this is we're attending state and national meetings and keeping up, and it's a hard decision. But as you can see, the requirements are there.
So the expenses for things like that would be absorbed within the budget?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many of the 99 charge that levy or assess
I
that?
don't know that, Joe. Find out if you want me to, but I don't know that. I know we have counties down in the southwest that are getting ready to take 3 and 4 counties together to be one.
Do you see that in this county merging with another county for it?
I hope not.
Of course.
And the only reason I say I hope not is because of the overall cost. I would tell you that we have a great infrastructure, and communications is no good without infrastructure. Do we need to improve it? Yes, there are things we need to do. Simulcast is one of the things we really need to do. That's our next step, and we need to put 3 more towers up. But the difference between going simulcast and putting 3 more towers up, which would probably be simulcast, each site's going to be $250,000. All right, we have 4 sites right now. That would fill in a lot of the stock. That's $1 million. Towers, another $250,000. Okay, but what you got to really look at is the radios we use. We're P25. That's what everybody's moving towards. We're already narrowband, and our handheld radios cost us around $1,400 to $1,600 a piece. Now, that's a lot of money. So think about that for every fireman, every ambulance, and every law enforcement person. And then both counties to our west, the county to our southeast, the county to our south is thinking about going this way. Each of their radios cost $6,000 to $7,000 a piece. Plus they have a $374 a year usage fee on them that never goes away. And we don't have the infrastructure. And that's about $10.5 million to put in this county just to have an infrastructure for that type. So we have the infrastructure. We have communication systems now, and we don't owe anything on any of ours. We are 0 debt. There's hardly any counties that can say that. We don't have debt on our 911 system. And that's because the 911 Service Board, one of the things they've wanted is not to go in debt. And that's why we did it in phases. And that, if you look at the job description, is the job of the 911 Service Board is to put a system together and look to the future what's needed. And they've done a great job at that. One of the members sits right here is going to be a member of this one board shortly. It's a lot of work, but they've made some pretty tough decisions. But public safety is one of those things that they say we cannot let go. I mean, I know some people's philosophy is, if you want public safety, you got to pay for it. Yeah, you do, but we still have to be a good steward of citizens' money and get the best bang for our buck.
Well, I have no problem with going part-time to start with. You know, it's a place to start. You have to start somewhere. Because I know there's a lot of problems out there. There's a lot of signs that are up that should not be up. There's a lot of places that should have a sign for 911. So
and actually what you're talking about is probably not even part of this position.
I know it.
but
it's still something we
exactly.
need a 911 director for, because, you know, to take care of some of that stuff.
But aren't you really, you're advocating for a full-time position though, half within each entity.
Exactly.
So that's what you're going to be advertising for, is a full-time position.
They'll be doing both.
And who's going to do, who's your interview team? Who's going to have the final say?
Well, since I don't know if it's been approved, no, that's even
Well, I'm
been.
just assuming, who makes the final decision on who's going to be hired?
We usually do it within the board itself.
Personnel committee.
We have a personnel committee, we meet, and they go, and how we've done all in the past is a complete number system.
Have you talked to Carrie about a levy? And
I have not.
Where that would fall?
I have not.
We probably need to include her in the conversation. I don't know whether she's available or not. Is she in this morning? You know that.
She's here. She is here. I'll see if she's
Because it would only make sense if in fact we go with a position like this, and if in fact we're going to levy for it, probably it would make sense to not levy the exact amount if we're planning on growing some of the infrastructure and so forth. I'm not advocating putting a big levy out there, but you definitely want to have enough. And
well, and I will tell you that one of the things that I'm working with Representative Kaufman right now on is to change some verbiage in the Iowa Code under the 911 where they have a lump sum of money from, it's a third set of cash, which is where most of us are getting $100,000 no match fee, but it can only be used in the PSAP because of the verbiage. We're trying to change that so we can use that on the towers, and we can use that down to the emergency responders. And if that would happen, then over a period of the next 5 years with that money, we would expand our system and be able to keep it up to date. Come on up here, Carrie. You're in your expertise now.
You want money, don't you? You know that's how it always is, Carrie.
But,
Yeah, I know.
So, and I actually see that money that the state has and growing, because they have a little over $14 million in that pot now. And that pot was set up so each PSAP, which there's 118 of them in the state right now, could have $100,000 this year. And they, in the beginning of December, and it could change now, and I hope it has changed now, they had only had 42 PSAPs apply for that money. So that money is growing. And in end of 2016, there's another amount of money that is being paid to the wireless companies at this time will also start adding in. So there's another additional money. So that $100,000 in the next 2 to 3 years could become $200,000, or as some want, they want to return some of that to the PSAPs right away. Some want to return all of it to the PSAPs, and that would not allow growth. And we have immediately on the horizon 2 major projects. One, we're going to have text to 911 coming in. And because the state has an unknown amount of different systems out there right now, they can't run multiple systems at the state for text, so they're going to do a web base until they can get everybody on a single or 2 systems. And then we'll add it into our CPUs. Johnson County, Cedar County, Scott County, and Lynn County is now getting theirs. We've already got systems that'll take the text to 911 in our system. So we can do it either way. But the problem is, we don't want to bring text to 911 up today and be the only county taking it. Because a 911 call that you call in has an average of about 6 minutes. A text to 911, and this is data from those that have it, takes around 24 minutes. Now, there's not a lot of them. And once you get the first system in there, out of Cincinnati, Ohio, they do about 800,000 calls a year. And they had 17 text to 911 messages in the last year of time. The Houston, Texas area does 1.3 million calls. They had 23. The longest one out of Cincinnati, he told me, was 1 hour and 26 minutes. Problem with text to 911 that there's a lot of work to do there is it doesn't give location. You don't have a clue if you get the text or not unless they answer you. And there's going to be a lot of education go out there, and that's some of the stuff we've addressed in the legislation that we've set forward through Representative Kaufman. There's just projects like that. 911, another big one right now that's being worked on is they're talking about phase 3. That's going to change everything. Right now, a lot of people don't realize this, and quite a few do know this. In every one of your new smartphones, there's 2 GPS systems. You can turn one of them off. The other one you can't. The one you can't turn off is your 911. And what the system's going to do is it's going to locate your GPS and then put a lat long. It's going to be sent to a file system, which each GIS will put into monthly, and that's how they're going to locate you and send what emergency responders need to come. Because that's one of the things he's worked on. Every house you have to go into, you got MSEG changes and you got Annie and Allie information just got to be put in there, and you have to put the person, the street, the address. You have to go into those things and you have to say who's law, who's fire, who's EMS, and then if you have in the Stanwood area, you have a first responder and an EMS, and this information, you got to put your ranges in, and every time someone changes your addresses or adds communities and don't tell you, then they're not in here. The system uses nothing but Google. And everybody asks me, oh, I don't Google. I'm sorry. We don't play with Google, and that's because a lot of people don't realize Google is their own system, and a layer is streets, a layer is trees, a layer is rivers, the layers are, each one. And every time Google makes a change, they say that's about $10 million. We just can't afford to do that, so we don't use that. We use our own system. And then Google draws from us with addresses every so often.
Okay.
But
Carrie in here, I think John had a question for you, Carrie.
Levying for a 911 position, do you know how that's going to work? I know other counties apparently have a 911 levy. How easy will that, or do you know anything about it?
I know nothing about that. I've never heard any other auditor talk about a 911 levy for a coordinator. I'll be honest with you. I can do some research and find out. There's certain things with 911 you got to bring upon all the residents of the county too. So I don't know if this is going to have to take, the election question.
See, and I don't know that either. I'm
Can
sure
we
that's a valid
research
item.
that, and then also it wouldn't hurt to find out how many in the state have it.
Okay.
I mean, it really doesn't mean anything necessarily, but it wouldn't be bad to know.
I'm pretty sure that would be a valid item. Up until the last law change, if you wanted to raise the surcharge to $250, remember that? You'd have to put that on the ballot. You could only do it for 2 years. You no longer can do that.
Right.
That's been wrote out.
But when you're talking a levy, I would think something tells me it's going to have to be an election.
That'd be on the ballot, I would think too.
That would be.
If you can check that out.
Yeah, I can do that. I know in the past, the predecessor, and I know I was on the board with you, John, during all that, and it was the person that actually got paid out of two different funds, EMA and then the sheriff's, and that person actually assumed the responsibilities of the 911. So.
Right.
Which I know it's all changed now. So, but yeah, let me check into that because I don't know.
So we're going to wait till we hear first, right?
Fine. So putting the EMA budget, do you want me to put a line in there for revenue and a line in there for salary? And if we use it, we do. If we don't, we don't.
Better plan, I guess, that way. I mean, it's better to plan that way than to not.
And we were talking, like you and I were talking, about 20 grand. Remember when we sat down and you thought, when I put my part and then the other part, if we took the two and made one?
Right, but then in depth, I mean, is it just going to be a part-time position? Does it need to be full-time? I think we need to figure this out too.
Yeah,
so it'll be full-time between the two.
Yeah, between the two, it would be full-time. So we talked about benefits and. You're right. There are a lot of questions.
Yeah, let me definitely check into that. These 911's totally,
Different breed.
different code section.
Okay, we'll put it on the burner then for you.
Yeah, I'll look into it ASAP. So since it is that time of year for budgeting, so we'll find out.
If I can ask one more thing about this, okay, and I'm going to shift off of the 911. And I think Carrie will kind of vouch for this a little bit. She doesn't have deep knowledge in this, but she knows a little bit. The individual that I do have up there has got a little tech savvy. He's not a little tech savvy, he's really tech savvy. And I understand, just in hearing yesterday, that he's thinking about buying multiple servers up here, or something. Well, one of the things that came to ours is okay. That must be how it came through. It was backup, and with the microwave we have, we're looking at doing 100% backup nightly to a computer up here over the microwave. And the reason why we're thinking about doing that is instead of it being a 12 meg band, because when you start doing the backups, it takes a lot of band and you can take away from stuff. Our microwave's at 800 meg band. Data can fly across that thing and don't cost nothing because we own it. So if you looked at a backup system, you could back up out there to your own system, and it could back up, ours could back up here to our own system. They never meet. And they'd have a nightly 100% backup.
How secure are they?
100% secure, because it has no outside links. And you know, when he told me that, I said, okay. And I checked with a couple of guys that do this, and they said, you have 800 meg band? Oh God, yes. You have a 100% secure system.
Check the solutions and that.
Anything. Yeah. The one thing is, the solutions never worked with me yet on my system, because we were trying to do a couple other things through that. And we had to change it around. But yeah, that'd be perfect. But you have the opportunity to do a 100% backup system that way at a lower cost.
Dad's kind of in charge of that.
I understand. Did he talk to you? Brad talked to you about that a little or something?
Yeah, we're not gonna get all new servers by any means.
Okay.
And the county, he suggested combining servers, and I know the county attorney won't wanna do that, and the
Well,
engineer either.
And I know people are scared when you combine servers. They're saying, well, people can see your stuff. No, you can't. You can divide servers off so no one else can see it in true security.
I can check with Solutions and
Yeah.
see what they think about it. We would still probably, I know we have two separate backups. We have our AS400, and we have the servers that back up through Exchange, which we just purchased new software to update, so.
Yeah, I just was offering. You do have a guy that's kind of tech savvy.
I can see what their thoughts are on it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Is this?
I hope I gave him the right time.
Huh?
I said, I hope I gave him the right time. I looking to see where my send file is. Don't know whether I did or not. Last week I turned to you, I said 9:30. Okay, I missed it. I sent a text. Surprisingly, I haven't talked to either of them.
I know, my pile is growing along. And you're just dancing all the way out, aren't you?
Please.
That's okay, because I left a pretty big pile in Durant.
I'm sure.
I just said it, I'm almost positive I said 9:30. I'm actually don't feel too bad.
Don't you?
I had all that crap the last
That
4
everybody
days.
else had, yeah.
This is the first time I've actually been out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I hope I gave them the right time.
I think they just seem to be walking.
Okay, I think I turned and said 9:30, didn't I?
Not quite 9:30.
Okay, I'm just. hope
And
I
on
gave
Bobby
him-
time, it's not quite 9:30.
I just hope I gave
He like
Dvorsky the
that now.
9:30.
Yeah.
Like father, like son.
Yeah, Bobby's usually a little
You
more
don't
on
have-
time than me.
You don't have to take that.
I was at your solid waste commission meeting.
You're right.
What?
I was at your solid waste commission meeting.
Ah. You gonna get those windows fixed up in that building? Going to improve for months? Every time I drive by there.
Solid
it's
waste?
crazy. Yeah.
Really, I didn't even know.
There's a lot of things that need fixed
I must
out
be the
there
only one
don't
that
get
sees
done.
it.
That would be one among many.
One of many, many.
Yes, that would be correct.
Maybe that's, they use that for ventilation. We did.
All right, there's.
Causing trouble again? Yeah. You know,
Yeah, you like your chair.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Does it feel good?
I just have a sneaking suspicion I might have said
He's making my pile there and
something
I'm making
wrong.
a pile in Durant.
Is that what she's doing? Making the pile for
I
us?
hope I didn't.
I'm sure you will. I have no doubt.
That way you don't have to get up and start bringing dessert. How are you?
Exactly, no, that's exactly.
Morning, how are you?
How are you?
Good to see you. Your hands are cold.
I know, they always are.
Morning. 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 Welcome, sir. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
Our representative.
I don't know, I hope I give him the right date.
He didn't pick up the flu I had.
Yeah.
And everybody else?
I'm done with
Yeah,
it. I'm through it.
I'm pretty much done now too. Our wife, they were checking her out for whooping cough.
Whooping cough.
Yeah,
Adult?
because she really was coughing. So,
Really? I didn't
Yeah.
know adults could get whooping cough.
well, I hope not.
It wears
Oh.
off, and especially if they're around the shots they have.
Yeah.
I'll be
Really
darned.
cough.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Those aren't actually too bad.
Yeah.
Well, I got the, this is good. This is good. Okay, all right. Good. I couldn't remember whether I told you guys 9:30 or not.
Legislative time.
I gave you the right time, didn't I, when I texted you?
9:30.
Yeah, okay.
8:30,
I didn't-
so.
No. Well, it was originally 8:30, then we went to 9:30. I was hoping, okay, good.
Yeah, check in the mail too.
I can give an update on the solid waste when we're done too. That's where I was at this morning.
Okay.
Solid waste stuff.
Get
Here,
in the hot
Bobby.
seat there, Tommy.
I'm gonna be in the hot seat.
All right, walk right in. Ready for me?
We're ready.
How are you?
How are you? See ya.
See ya.
Editor?
Morning.
How's it going? Good to see you sitting there.
You want me to?
Well,
Turn the
somebody
heat up
drew
a
on
little
me.
bit for you, Tom?
What's that?
Turn the heat up a little bit for you?
I'm all right.
Probably gonna stain on your shirt.
Whichever one wants to start off.
Okay, yeah, everybody got colds and everything. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity. And, you know, I assume we're here to listen and see what the supervisors and department heads and everyone have and all that. Session, revenues are running fairly well, but we have a lot of outstanding commitments we made over the last few years that's going to eat up a lot of that. Medicaid, really big numbers on that, big numbers on backfill of commercial property taxes and education reform. And then there's also a movement to try and do something with allowable growth, which we haven't done for a while, so I think we need to do that. And then there's the whole situation with universities, public universities, and what we're going to do with that. So the budget's going to be quite a tough situation this year. So we want to kind of tamp down people's enthusiasm for asking for all kinds of stuff because we're going to be tight there. That's the budget situation, and Bobby sort of amplify on anything. I think we may actually, hopefully, there seems to be some movement anyway, looking at some sort of fuel tax or some sort of comprehensive way to address roads and bridges in Iowa. And I will say, Director Trambino's been out going around the state with the road builders and has a pretty good plan, a lot of different ideas. And he has really ideas on how to get, make sure we get grain to the river and make sure we have rail and all these things. He's even talking about air service and all that. So he really is a DOT person, not an old Iowa Commission person. And I think he really is trying to figure out ways to increase economic development in Iowa through the transportation system, and it's got some different ideas. So I think it's going to take a real comprehensive plan to deal with the roads and bridges in Iowa, and I think that's the way everybody's looking to move that forward. Let's see, gas tax, that, what else? What am I blanking on that we're not dealing with? Governor has a few small initiatives, I think, to move things forward. A couple things with me personally, two or three different committees, I guess 2 new committees this year. I'll be on state government. I've never been on that, served on that committee before. Hopefully we can do something on EMS out of that committee, so we can look at that. I'll be back on transportation committee, be powerful vice chair of transportation. So hopefully we can, you know, be able to be involved with the trying to deal some with the infrastructure and transportation. And I also am going to be on the Human Services Appropriations Sub, that I've never served on that before, as well as Rules Administration, Education, and of course Chair of Appropriations. So I'll hopefully keep busy. So
What sub?
Health and Human Services.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So it will be different. Let's see if there's anything else that we're trying to deal with. We met with the Board of Supervisors and the people in Johnson County, and they had a lot of interesting ideas there also. So anyway.
Just to piggyback off of what Senator Dvorsky said, revenue, I think, you're looking at between 3 and 4.5% increase, I believe, in revenue. But like he said, we got nearly $500 million in obligations. When you look at over $200 million in new Medicaid spending, a lot of that derived from the increased enrollment in Medicaid from the Affordable Care Act, again, the commercial property tax, and the Education Innovation Act, which is, those three together are nearly $500 million. So I don't anticipate a ton of cutting, but as far as increased spending, it's going to be tight. But I have noticed that there's a growing, I know myself and a couple other Republicans like Quentin Stannerson up in Lynn County have expressed our desire to settle allowable growth within the first 30 days as mandated by law. And so I think there's a potential, and what that number will be, I think, is yet to be determined. But I think there's a real possibility of that happening. I would also agree that something with infrastructure funding is going to happen. It needs to happen. I think the governor is having a meeting with the heads of both parties in both chambers soon to mix different ideas and see what can and cannot happen. A few Cedar County specific issues. I know that the Rock Island Clean Line has been the #1 issue that I've heard from people. And I hadn't looked closely enough at the map recently, until recently. And what the current line does is it actually cuts off Clarence, and it would forbid, essentially, any further west economic development from the city of Clarence forever. It would be shut down because that's how the line goes. And that problem has been permeating across the state, where this line is just drawn basically, in my opinion, for profit and not for any sort of sensical matter. And you've got farmers who are obviously not wanting it, but now you've got small towns and small cities who are literally going to be forever forbidden from expanding because of this company's wishes. And my hope was that over this last year, I purposely didn't push too hard for legislation last year because I hoped that there would be some sort of a consensus, that there would be a larger participation rate. But after all these years and after all this past year of efforts, 12.5% is all better they can do. Only 12.5% of the landowners have agreed. And for me, when you've got an issue that's been the #1 communication in this county, and you've only got 12.5% participation, something's got to change. I'm still hopeful that there can be a compromise where we could go along with the Clean Line's original ask, which was to go along a highway with existing right-of-ways, or at least majority of existing highways, and so they could still have their Clean Line, and we could protect our landowners. Whether that's able to happen or not, I don't know, but all I know is when 12.5% are all they can achieve, and they're looking at that amount of mass condemnation potential, that it's something I hope the Utilities Board can resolve for us. A couple other issues. I know that there's been a lot of talk on the flag desecration ruling recently. I raised a lot of attention to that. I have never seen in my 10 years in Cedar County politics, I've never seen an issue have a larger percentage of agreement than the fact that you should not be able to stomp and spit on the flag at the funeral, of a fallen soldier. If you want to spit and stomp on the flag on your own time, I think you're an idiot, but that's constitutionally protected, unfortunately. But to do so at a funeral and interrupt the First Amendment rights of these soldiers' families to a peaceful assembly is just not okay. And the outpouring of support that I've received for that has been it's been overwhelming, in the high 90s%. There's been an extreme superminority that's mostly politically motivated that have gone against it, but to see Cedar Countyans that I've never even heard from call me from across the state, from across the district, it's been overwhelming to want to protect the families of our fallen soldiers' peaceful goodbyes. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but I just know that Senator Dvorsky and I have a track record of working together greatly. I have a lot of respect for him. He does a lot of great things for Cedar County. We've got split government, so we have to get along. it helps that we actually kind of like each other. And so I anticipate lots of cooperation going forward to solve all the problems that we possibly can.
First of all, the engineer couldn't be here this morning. He's on vacation. He's concerned about the gas tax, which I am also. The other thing that I would like to see something done on, and maybe it's something that you could put into the road use tax, is what about this casino money that only goes to the counties where the casinos are at? Why don't you split it up, put it in the road use tax, and let's do the whole state, and then those counties can still get their money back through the road use tax. Instead of just letting those certain counties have it, you know, because we can't get a casino in this county. You know, split the money up among all 99 counties and put it for roads and bridges, because that's what we need bad in this state. I don't know if anybody's thought of that or anything, but I know they'd like to. We'd like to get some more of the casino money, because our people go to these casinos here from Cedar County and spend their money there. So we'd like to see more money brought back to our county.
I've heard that from a lot of people. The way it's funded right now is extremely unfair towards the small counties whose residents, smaller counties whose residents do go and gamble, but then the money doesn't always come back home. I would definitely support that.
You know, go ahead.
Well, I believe the counties get a portion of it back via their community foundations, but that's pretty minimal in the big scheme of things. So.
There is the bill that probably doesn't have much of a chance that Lynn County's trying to push, where it's actually kind of an ingenious bill, even though I don't think it has a chance, but a piece of that is to increase that allotment for the. Is there a way that you can pick and choose out of that bill for that? That's the first time I've seen in a long time a concerted effort to look at increasing that percent.
Well, as you know, as soon as we introduce something like that, we have a gambling debate.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do that probably. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Cedar Rapids really does have interesting ideas there. Mayor Corbett's really been pushing it. I had a meeting in Cedar Rapids. He actually came to Coralville, met with us also. So he's really out there promoting some interesting ideas. So I don't know.
What's your sense in the Senate?
Well, I don't think there's too much support. We did a little study here a few years ago about people in leadership in the Iowa Senate, and there were only 2 people in leadership in the Iowa Senate who didn't have a casino. It was Senator Bolko and myself. So didn't have a casino in their district, so it really is an interesting situation. So.
One of the things.
But you got to throw it out on the table anyway. You know, if you're going to talk about funding. Sorry.
One of the things I heard recently, I think it was the Iowa Soybean Association was, I think it was them promoting it, was to address the issues of rail and so forth. I know you talked earlier about Department of Transportation, but they talked about the possibility of extending the tonnage for semis and so forth. I think they were talking 102,000, which that puts more pressure on our road system.
Yeah.
I know they had some legitimate issues as far as rail. We don't necessarily think a lot about rail in our part of the state. However, our system of getting grain to the rivers has changed a bunch recently, especially with a lot of the coal and everything taking, a lot of other people using the rail, and a lot of the western community or the western part of the state of Iowa was having difficulty securing rail to get the grain out. So I know there's going to be some push in that regard, which I think even furthers the necessity for a change in the gas tax. One of the things that I know it's happened the last 10 years. We see lower gas prices right before the session. We get into the session and gas prices raise, and that causes legislators to hesitate because they get phone calls and so forth. And gas prices are going up. How are you going to slam this tax on us right now? I think the earlier it can be done in the session, the better. And I think you need to take a look at how much it's gone down in the last 3 or 4 months, and really consider that in your decision-making process.
I completely agree. Fuel, infrastructure funding, and education, if we could get that done in the first month, I think it would set the tone for the rest of the session, and it would eliminate that concern with the increased fuel prices, and I think it would just build up a lot of goodwill with both parties. So I'd love to see both those issues get taken care of in the first 6 weeks or so.
Do you think I'll just ask it bluntly, do you think the problem will still, in past now, it has been in the past, will it still remain the Senate Republicans, to be real blunt? I know that sounds like a loaded question. It's not intended to be.
Yeah, I don't know how many of the new, I was trying to think how many new Senate Republicans we'll have. We'll have 3 or 4.
Yeah.
One over from the House, Jason Schultz, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 2, 3, so I don't know what they're, I think we were up to, last year we were up to 8 votes from the Senate Republicans, and Senator Gronsdale said he would maybe live with, ideally we'd have 13 Democrats, 13 Republicans. But he said he could live with like 11, and I think they were up to 8, and Josh Burns offered to come over and vote. But that wasn't quite enough, so it was only, I think 8, and maybe at one point they thought they might have 9, but I don't know what the change in new people, if that's, the Senate Republicans have been pretty much no the last few years, so I don't know if they're going to change how they operate or not.
I think the difference could be if the governor decides to make infrastructure funding a priority in his legislative introduction speech, because last year he was silent. There was not a word on infrastructure funding, and I'm hopeful that that'll be a part of his his session agenda, and I think that could potentially move a few Senate Republicans.
Now, we do have our ranking member, I assume he's ranking member again on transportation, who's been working on this actually, Senator Kapushian, who's really been trying and has voted for it in the past. So he's been trying to move it forward, but he's not getting a lot of people behind him in this House or Senate Democrat or Republicans.
Any of the department heads have any questions for Senator or Representative?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Patty.
Patty Hammond from Cedar County Veterans Affairs and General Assistance. The governor passed a great bill regarding veterans and all the homestead tax, property tax exemption. I was just wondering if you guys were going to make it a priority to kind of clean up that bill a little bit. I know you heard a lot of disgruntlement about some of the way that the language was interpreted, and it basically split a dividing line between those that are 100% permanent and total to get the homestead property tax exemption, that they're rated at that, or those that are being paid at 100% rate under what they call individual unemployability, because maybe their rating is only 70, but they've been deemed incompetent or unable to have gainful employment, so they're paid at 100% level. That does not make them eligible for that, but yet they're still being paid at that. So there's a little bit of language cleanup, and I don't know, we were hoping that maybe you guys could get together and try and clean that up. It kind of got pushed through at the very end, and a lot of things came up at the very end of that maybe could get cleaned up somewhat with language and things like that, especially when for the application they have to present a letter every year to make application for this exemption. The VA only issues one letter, and that's a time of awardment. After that, if you're awarded 100% permanent and total, all you get is a letter saying your rate has gone up because of COLA, or the cost of living. They don't get a new issued letter, and it's really difficult to get that from the VA with what the stipulations state in the application, that you have to prove that it's a letter within 12 months of application and things like that. I mean, you've got some veterans out there that have been rated at 100% for 10 years. They don't get a new letter every year. I mean, once you get it, you're done. It's rated permanent and total. It's not going to change unless the veteran passes. So I think there's a few things that potentially could clean up, because all it is, I mean, yes, you should still have to reapply. You should still have to confirm that you have that letter and things like that. But it's very difficult to get from the VA a new letter every time. And I mean, it doesn't say on there, it just says how much you're getting paid. It doesn't say you're at 100%. So you actually have to ask somebody to reissue a letter, and I don't know how well you guys know, but the federal government's not real easy to get that letter, and there was a lot of people that missed out on receiving that 100%, missing that deadline because we couldn't get it for them in time. So I'm just hoping that you guys can get some cleanup language done on that to make it maybe a little bit easier, because I know the intent was to offer something to veterans for the state of Iowa. That was a huge push, but it kind of, all the barricades went up in front of them, you know, so only a few got in where others got left out that should be rightfully getting that same exemption.
Patty, is your affiliation making recommendations for these changes
We are
for
trying,
them?
yes.
Okay.
We do have some, we're working with some of the service organizations and everything, but right now, one of the biggest things we need is ISAC, and ISAC has yet to acknowledge the County Veterans Service offices. They kind of threw us out of ISAC because we were underneath the Community Services umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So we are still, they will not vote to let us into ISAC until March, or whenever the next ISAC is at March.
Mm-hmm.
March, they're not allowing us. We've been on there for a year trying to get it through the boards, trying to get them, because without the power of ISAC behind you, it's hard to get the power of the House or the Senate to get behind you, because if ISAC won't support it, then a lot of people aren't on board with that if you don't have ISAC. And ISAC has not wanted to, for this reason or that reason, allow us in because they were afraid with our association, our commissioners are part of our association, and then there was a scare of all of our commissioners wanting to attend ISAC meetings.
Horrible thing, huh?
Yeah, well,
Get more people involved.
Well, they were
It's a horrible
scared because
idea.
if you have all these commissioners coming, where would they hold these meetings? And
Really?
you know,
That was
yeah,
their attitude?
Yeah, that was, and so then we had to change our bylaws that basically said they're voting members in our association, but they would not be considered voting members when it came to ISAC. And so we jumped through this hoop to that hoop. It's been quite the ordeal, and we just now finally got it where they've accepted the bylaws. The board did, I believe, this fall, but now it has to wait till April or March for the whole, every association membership to vote on it to allow us back in as Veterans Affairs, because when they changed that law back in 2009, where it pulled us out from underneath the Community Services umbrella and stated that the Veterans Affairs offices were supposed to be ran and nobody above them other than the commissioners, that pulled us out from that, and that pulled us out from ISAC. So it's been kind of a...
It seems like a whole lot of unnecessary static.
Yeah. It definitely is a whole lot of unnecessary static, but we've been doing it as an association, one level at a time, finding out what we needed to do and trying to figure out. We tried for several years to go without ISAC support legislatively, and everything we presented bombed. This past year, of course, we had got a lot of things through, but I think that had a lot to do as well. It's, you know, election year, and you had the governor that was pushing through all of those veteran bills and everything like that. It was the big push with home-based Iowa, so it kind of all went together, which was great. So we got a bunch of changes done to the code. You know, there was just, it was great sweeping changes, but with that there needs to be a few tweaks. So we're trying as an association, along with the service organizations, that of course Day on the Hill will be there presenting stuff. I will not be able to be there at Day on the Hill this year, so that's another reason why I came to see you today. But
what we can do, rather than waiting for them in March or April when it could potentially slip out, I'm actually on Veterans Affairs this year.
Yay!
And a good friend of mine, Quentin Standerson, he did a couple tours over in the Middle East in the 90s, is the chair.
Okay.
And so whatever language changes you think are needed, get them to me. I'll sponsor the legislation and make it a priority to get out of the House. And I don't know who's the Senate Veterans
Well, it
chair.
was Senator Beal, but I
yeah,
can't remember who it is now. He did a nice job. But,
yeah, and then we're really going to miss that.
yeah. Is it Senator Horn? I can't remember. I'll have to look that up. Yeah, if you could send me that also. And also from the ISAC point of view, we can talk to Jamie Cashman in August. And my personal sheriff is, you know, he's on the board, and he's going to be the he's going to be president of ISAC in a couple of years.
They came,
and our constituent, yes.
They went out and presented this past
Sheriff Lonnie, he can work on this.
Fall, but I believe the Board of Supervisors, they didn't get to present to the Board of Supervisors at ISAC. Most of the different organizations allowed some of our representatives, and if it doesn't come from me, it'll probably come from our association president, because I'm sure you've all met Elizabeth Ledvina in one way or another, and she's also a state commissioner now also, represents, I think, the American Legion on that. But so if it doesn't come from me, I will definitely be in contact with her and say, here's your in. They know it's coming, so Elizabeth will probably be in contact with you. Usually she is there every time there has something to do with veterans, so you'll see her a lot
You can let her know that I'll be happy to sponsor the budget for her.
Yeah, I just think that there's some cleanup stuff that can be done, and I think it would definitely make a difference and make it easier. And I know you've had some contact with a couple of veterans from the county, and they're, I've talked to them because they were quite upset when they were told, well, you don't qualify because you're not this, and I'm like, I know, but we're hoping to change that. So that was just my biggest concern, I guess, at this point. All right, thank you.
Any other questions back there? Comments?
Allowable growth, you mentioned allowable growth. What's the talk on that? What are you thinking of changing?
Well, I think we actually, we didn't follow the law last year, so maybe we should try and follow it this year. So there should be really two we need to set. I don't know if we get to that or not, but and there's ranges from 2% to 6% that people are talking about. ISAC, ICA, and everybody were like 6%. And we'll see if we can, because they haven't had.
So if we were to bring it up to what the laws required, what would it be? I mean, basically it says we're not meeting the standard or the.
Within 30 days.
30 days, but it was 30 days last year.
That's the standard you're talking about. It's when it's done.
Yeah,
right.
when it's done.
Okay.
So we really need to do it for 2 years if we're going to get back on track.
Okay. So you've got proposals or suggestions all the way from 2 to 6.
Right.
And
For the 1 year, and then I don't know about the other year.
Try to find some room in the middle.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
Governor hasn't stated his recommendation yet in his budget. I don't know what that'll be. It could be 0, 1, 2. I don't know. But I think there can be. I mean, I personally would like to see 4% set within the first 30 days. It's within our revenue growth, and there was not a sense in my caucus last year, but I've noticed it this year that we are determined. There's a group of us to see it set within the first 30 days, as compliant with the law. So I'm cautiously optimistic and pushing for it.
Good. That would be good.
Senate Democrats probably will come out at 6%. We'll see.
There's also I can't even remember where it came from, but there was an initiative to change the funding formula a bit to compensate for districts that have a lot of transportation costs, be like our North Cedar. Has there been any talk in the two caucuses, your guys' two caucuses, about doing that with transportation?
There's been talk for years, on that. And Clear Creek Amana happens to be like this 3rd or 4th largest geographic district in the state. Also, that's in part of our district. So, and they had an interim, and I don't know what. I'm not sure. Yeah, what they came up with there, if they made any recommendations, but.
I think that's where I might have seen that.
Yeah. But there is certainly a need there. There's a lot. You talk about Western Dubuque, Clear Creek, Amana, some of these other districts, North Cedar, others that really.
Then as they consolidate more in Southwest Iowa, I think that's.
Yeah.
One thing too, I just wanted to add. I forgot. My committees are night and day different. The only two that stayed actually was I'm still on Judiciary. That's the only one that stayed. But now I'm on local government, so I should be able to be more helpful to more local government issues here in Cedar County. And I'm on Veterans Affairs, which is something I'm looking forward to. And then I'm the first government oversight chair to come out of Cedar County. So government oversight is kind of a unique committee. It's one of only 3 committees that's funnel proof, along with appropriations and ways and means. And it's year round. It can meet year round, and it's basically tasked with just overseeing state government and making sure when there are frauds or things going wrong, then I have investigative powers. So I'm optimistic that my friend Senator Rob Hogue and I can find some areas of agreement. I plan on making it a more active committee than it was in the past. It's not really known for a committee that has a lot of legislation, but there has been some legislation come out of it in recent years, and I plan on doing some things with it. What that is, yet to be determined. But it puts me in a unique position to be able to help out Cedar County to be the head of oversight. So, and then finally, I'm on Commerce, which is a pretty fun committee. So everything that I was on last year is completely different, with the exception of Judiciary this year. So it should be interesting.
They're going to get the new state prison open down south?
That's one of my first agenda items on my oversight chairmanship. The fact that they've had to tear up their floor 3 times, they still can't get the ventilation properly. I think they finally got the geothermal system set, but you're talking about millions in tax dollars. So I know we'd like to see it get open quickly.
Because I sit on the 7th Judicial Board down there.
Oh, yeah, it's a
Brings it
mess.
up all the time. And
Is
we'd
Mr.
like to
Wayne
get-
still there?
Huh?
Is Mr. Wayne
Oh,
still?
yeah.
Wow.
I think he's gonna retire this next year.
Wow.
Yep. Jim
Longevity,
Wayne is
yeah.
still there.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, you know, I worked in corrections for years, so we had a little meeting at the end of the session with the Director Baldwin about some of these problems, and some of them are solved, and there's still others out there, though. The good thing, a little bit, is one of the problems they have is some architect who completely screwed it up, and then they went bankrupt. Their firm went bankrupt. So, but they have insurance. So the state has a really good case. Once it's done, the state's going to get their money back and everything. But the problem is fixing it and trying to get all this done. And Director Baldwin would like to retire, but they're they may keep him on as a consultant or something, because he's been there since day one, and hopefully to get this stuff done. So they're still working on it. Now the problem is the deal with some sort of fire situation and how ventilation that doesn't really work. So.
I know they want to build a new place down there in Davenport for the alcoholics and some of the minor cases down there also, because it's down there on 4th Street, I think, or something, 3rd or 4th Street. And that's terrible down there. We took a tour of that here a few weeks ago. And
yeah. Well, they got that new one a couple of years ago.
That's
finally.
up on Main, yeah.
Yeah, but
and they're full up there. It's the other place down there is where they kind of get off our work release and stuff like that down there. If you take a tour of that, you'd be shocked at how they're treated down there.
I never quite understood. I guess it's just because the legislature, not enough people are familiar with corrections, but it's been shown time and time again, and actually documented, the more funding and resources you put in the community base, the less recidivism you'll have, and whether it'll cut down on the overcrowding the prisons, and that's been documented. But we never seem to grasp that. New people have to learn every couple of years or whatever how to do that or whatever. So
then you're going to have the back pay to the regions of the mental health, backfill and all that.
Yeah, there's one more year of that, right?
Yeah. Okay, is there any more questions or comments for?
Well, thanks for taking an interest in Cedar County.
Sure.
We appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Appreciate it.
I was going to say welcome to the new, the re-elected and the new people on the board. So, congratulations.
Thank you
More
for
fun,
coming.
huh?
And,
Yeah, more fun.
hope you have a very successful session out there in Des Moines. We'll look forward to hearing what you have to say after that session is over.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Okay,
Thanks a
thank
lot.
you.
Thanks for coming in, you guys.
Do you have a committee report?
Yeah. Before him, now, most of this we'll have at, we set our meeting on the 29th of January at 6:30 when all of us get together, which would include the 5 of us in here.
29th of January?
29th. Just a couple of things we talked about this morning. The 2 part-time employees are working out very well. It doesn't seem to have been a lag in anything. In fact, the 1 part-time Mike has come in, took off with a load this morning right when we got there at 8 o'clock. The most of our conversation was about the final payment for the truck was scheduled for this year, or actually this 14-15 year, $26,000. And then the next, if you remember back from our last meeting, the next is a trailer, and then another trailer, and then finally the loader is kind of the sequence of things. Trailer, he thinks it's going to be around $65,000. What we talked about, going back and forth, is can we delay instead of paying the $26,000 and we have the dollars, about $170,000 in the reserve, instead of paying for that $26,000, which is in the budget right now, and finishing off that truck, and then that would mean waiting for the trailer. He says the trailer is, it's imminent that they need this. In fact, they're not even a trade-in value. So it's going to be whatever scrap is, of whether we buy the trailer and then pay for the tractor, or finish the final payment on the tractor after the next fiscal year. So that's what we're going to put in the budget to do that, and then the full committee will get a chance to weigh in on that. That was probably what took the most time the back and forth. There was a couple of personnel issues. One of them I don't think I can talk about.
So you'll probably need a
publicly.
budget amendment then for this year.
Correct,
Yes.
correct, and that will be what the, I believe that is the only thing on the budget amendment. We're looking good at the 6 month. He looks like we're gonna be at about plus 40,000, which is about where we were before, so with the exception of that one piece, we probably wouldn't have needed a budget amendment this year, which in fact I said, Betty will be happy about that. Those were the, let me look here. Yeah, just 1 second. 6,000 budget numbers. Oh, the final thing was, and this will be for the whole committee to decide, but in the budget that's going to be proposed by the executive committee, it doesn't look like we have not figured in a fee increase into that. So it'll be the first time in a while that there just doesn't, where things are going so well right now, it doesn't look like we need that. And of course, this is the final year of that 10,000 to reach the 90,000 for the equity among the cities. But most of this stuff you're going to hear all again on the 29th. But that's what we talked about anyway.
Okay. The only thing I have at the meeting is, Betty, thank you for serving the last 4 years. I've enjoyed working with you. I've learned a lot from you, and hope you come back and visit us once in a while.
doubt.
And if we need anybody on any committees, we know who to appoint.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll call me.
But thank you for serving the last 4 years.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else come before the meeting?
I didn't get the mail because they were sorting.
You want to check?
You want me to check that?
Yeah, go check, because we won't have another meeting until next Tuesday, boys.
Or, well, Friday, January 2nd.
Yeah, that's right,
Second.
Friday.
At 8:30?
Friday the 2nd.
Sure.
8:30. Maybe sober enough then, after celebrating New Year's.
Say, celebrate New Year's by sweeping.
I'm going to have 3 grandkids.
On New Year's Eve?
Nothing,
Yeah.
Bev?
No mail.
No mail.
Just think how much
Okay.
fun is that?
But a 1-year-old who's never stayed
Oh, good luck with that.
anywhere or with anybody